Sex and God. So my guess is that most people think that you can't have sex if you love God, or you can. What about a sex addict? How do you know if you're a sex addict? What if you are maybe in your 20s and that's a time when hormones are raging? What do you do if you are a person of faith and yet you have maybe kind of a secret with regards to your sexuality, your habits, pornography, masturbation, all of these topics that are just real, and it seems like sometimes we don't talk about them enough. These are things that are very important because it's first is biology. All of us obviously are here because of sexuality. All of us, I mean, I'm sure there are some that aren't this way, but all of us enjoy or desire the companionship, the love, the intimacy of sexuality. There's also just the simple biology of it all. For humanity to continue to expand, we have to have procreation and continuing to have babies. Plus, I mean, babies are cute. Now, there are so many things with regards to sex and God. There's also a famous book that I've enjoyed reading over the last few years called Sex God. And it's a really good study on all that the Bible talks about with regards to sex. Years ago, I did a show here on this channel with Dr. Peggy Lesnick, who is a sex therapist. And she was a part of my show at that time, and a couple other people as well. And we talked about pornography and God, and does God hate sex, and what happens when a male or female is involved in pornography, or maybe even going beyond that, illicit relationships or unfaithfulness. Affairs, marital unfaithfulness. Now, all those things obviously are pretty tough topics. They're obviously not very fun things to talk about, but they're the reality of life, right? Now, the thing that I am mostly interested in is actually the behavior of love, and how to decide what exactly is right and wrong with regards to attraction. I meet and I work with a lot of young people that are drawn to, obviously, another person, and then they are people of faith, but they don't always know how to bring both things into existence, or to be faithful to God and to their desires. Let's say the female, their desires usually are for love, for acceptance, to be told that they are beautiful, to be to have security, to have a man be faithful to them. For the male, of course, it's about biology. It's about sexuality and physical connection. And then you have, I study a lot of psychology, you have the male biological, and of course it does deal with morality, instinct to have many partners, and to have in some ways kind of that, what would we call it, kind of that basic instinct from thousands of years ago to have many babies, as to have the seed or your name be present for years to come. Whereas the woman, again, we're just talking psychology, not so much faith, seems to be more of a one person kind of being, because taking care of 15 children from 3-4 different guys isn't financially or emotionally or physically viable. It's just impossible. I mean, so now when it comes to God, we obviously know the 10 Commandments: do not commit adultery. And so we all get that. I think no matter what your faith background is or not, it makes sense at every level to not get divorced, to not have an affair, to not sleep around. No matter how open, liberal, non-Christian, atheist, agnostic, law of attraction you are, I think we see in society the negatives of having two, let's say, a couple not be married, or a couple that is unfaithful. Everyone suffers, and I always laugh at, especially you see it in the news or with movie stars that say that they went their separate ways, they got divorced, but it was amiable. I've never been divorced, but it doesn't seem to be real. I don't believe that kind of stuff. Now, there's also the aspect of grace and forgiveness. I think that the church has always focused on the negative aspects of sex, right? Don't do it, don't get near it, don't talk about it, it's horrible. And I know I've suffered because of that in my 20s, especially having very little guidance, as I've said many times before, in my 20s. First, because of not having my parents around, and then because the church just didn't talk about it or provide mentors or that kind of thing. And so I had no clue of how to navigate that very important and very volatile age as a male or a female. And so I think that there's a need for, let's call it mentorship in this whole area. Now, if you are a married woman, for example, let's say you're in your 30s and you have already, you've had 2 or 3 children, there may be now 10, 8, and 6, or 14, 10, and 8, and you still want to have sex with your husband, right? But he's busy, or he's getting older, or he's never home, or, and then the husband perhaps is looking around, or he's getting bored. I mean, these are the realities, right, of each stage of life. Then how does a couple remain faithful when you have these temptations all around? I've talked to my wife about this a lot, because these are things that obviously are very important to us. And we are very honest when it comes to our sexuality, and not to get too TMI here. But here's my point. It is an ongoing commitment that a couple has to make, first to faithfulness and then to intimacy. I've never talked to my parents, and again, TMI, right, about these topics. But my guess is, as people age, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, these biological instincts, I'm sure they're the same, but you have to then adapt. I love the verse in the Bible, probably my most, loved verse or favorite verse when it comes to sexuality, is where it says that a couple should only be non-sexually active or not active is because of prayer. Even though that sounds funny, but I like the premise, because, again, just taking it for what it is, I think what the writer of that verse, I'm sure it was Paul, was trying to get at is that as long as there's an agreement that things can work out, even if you're struggling, as long as you have an agreement with a person that you love, that you're working on this, you're working on that, then that seems to be the way forward. Now, I think that another thing that I really like to talk about is how much God, I don't, maybe it's weird to say it this way, that God loves sex, but maybe that's not quite the right way to say it. But let me say this, that there's nothing wrong with sex. Sex is beautiful. Now, if you're 14 watching this, or you're single, or you're divorced, or you're widowed, it doesn't change that. I mean, you have, as I said, these biological instincts to stay alive. And so, for companionship and for love and partnership and all the rest. And this is not about even being religious per se. This is about being a good human being. And yet God has, I would say, the best laws around when it comes to this topic. And so when he says that you should be faithful to your wife and you should not commit adultery, that, as I said, it makes sense at every level. Physically, humanly, financially, for the children. But what I was saying is that once you have failed, let's just say, you have a failed marriage, you've been through you've been unfaithful, or you are together with your partner and not married. It's not about judgment. I don't think that's not where my mind goes. I don't go around judging people. I go around trying to get to are there why are there struggles? What is it that the woman especially longs for? But the man too. I always think of the idea of celibacy. Obviously, not many people are gifted with celibacy, but here's what I mean. You might be tempted as a female to date a married man because you see that this man is safe and secure and can provide for you, and you might be in your 20s or 30s, and you might think, well, when is my Prince Charming going to come? Like, where is he? It comes down to celibacy. You think, I could be, excuse the language, thirsty for that man who's married, or who doesn't want to tell me if he's married, or he's lying to me, and yet I'm pretty sure he's lying. Or he's telling me he's not, but I'm sure he's lying. Or I could be celibate, meaning to say no to your desires. That's called discipline. And in sexuality, like with anything, drugs, food, even exercise, things that are good or bad for you, there is that human element called celibacy, or saying no, or discipline. And even though for most of us, celibacy can be like a really odd and old-fashioned word, I think it's a great word because it talks about two things. First, it talks about saying no to what you know is going to destroy you. But then it also says yes to what you're waiting for. You're saying, I know that I could have this married man or this single woman who's not my wife. I know that I could be texting her. I know that I could be inappropriate with her at the office or at the gym. But I'm going to say no to it because I know that it will destroy me. Even though it feels amazing, or for the woman, it's like I feel so loved, or I feel maybe that my boss is powerful, and so I have to say yes to his advances and all that, Me Too movement stuff that is very important. But there's that issue of celibacy where you say, no, I'm going to say no to that temptation. It goes back to Adam and Eve, right? Whether you believe that story is exactly literal or as an example, it doesn't matter. I believe it's true. But the point is, Eve could have said no. Adam could have said no to, quote, the temptation of Satan and the snake and the apple and the fruit and all that. And that's still true to this day. Now, how do you say no? Well, that's the process of, I think, of celibacy. And then even beyond that is of love. To love, in my case, let's just say, my wife more than my temptation. And that's the same thing no matter what age you are. And then I would say the second part is the grace, because the reality is that 50%, heck, 80% of people are struggling with some aspect of sexuality. Now, I'm not talking about gender and homosexuality necessarily. I'm talking about just wanting to go outside of what you know is best. And so when maybe you've crossed those lines and you didn't remain celibate, you gave in, you experimented, whatever you want to call it, then there has to be a path of restoration and of reclaiming your holiness. I know that sounds so old-fashioned, but I really love those words because holiness is beautiful. Holiness means to be set apart for a great purpose. And if I know something about men and women, is that we all want to be valued for our uniqueness, for how beautiful we are. And there's nothing more intimate in a marriage or in a relationship, dating relationship, friends, than to be valued for who you are. And that's what holiness is. Holiness is to be set apart. And so when you go through a challenge and you've been divorced, or you are not married to that partner, and or you're with a married man, or you're flirting with that young woman in the office, you have to say, first, I want to be celibate to honor my commitment to God and to honor my body, to honor myself. But second is you want to say, I want to be valued for who I am. I don't want to be just another casualty or another man's conquest. Even though your mind and your emotions will betray you and tell you, oh, he really loves me, even though he's got a wife and 2 kids at home, oh, he'll divorce her and he really loves me. You have to honor yourself enough to say, that's not for me. And that's where celibacy comes into place, meaning saying no to what can destroy you. And then if you've been through that mess, and you've been through I don't mean to be condescending in any way. I know that going through challenges is real. Then there has to be a process of restoration. Now, restoration meaning of healing. Now, here's the thing, as I've counseled many couples or young people, is you have to want to change. You have to want to be holy. And that's where the problem lies. Anytime that my wife and I, Rochelle and I, have had problems, have been at odds, or just meaning we've had an argument, and we feel like we're on opposite sides of the bed, we have to, again, not being TMI here, but we have to choose each other. And we choose each other 24 years. We have chosen each other this August, just a few weeks ago, by the grace of God, 24 years. Now, let's say you went through a divorce, or you did have the affair, or you did sleep with that married man. Well, you have to then believe in restoration, but you have to want to change. You have to want to go back to the true you, to the holy you, to the pure you. There are so many things that come to my mind. If you're, let's say, a 16-year-old girl or a young man, what does it mean to be celibate? Well, it means that you have first mentorship and people around you, parents, males and females. I would say males to males, females to females, unless it's like a therapist or maybe a spiritual coach or advisor kind of relationship, where you have guidance. As I said, the things that I lacked when I was in my late teens, early 20s, that's vital. Now, if you have a parent that isn't comfortable, doesn't like talking about this, they themselves never went through any sort of, quote, training or mentorship on this topic, then you as a young person need to get off of Twitter, get off of Instagram, get off of watching other models and whatever YouTube stuff you're into, or porn or any of that, and actually speak to a mentor. And to say, what do I do with my sexuality now? Who does that? Nobody, right? I know that. But that really is the way forward, is to have conversations around this topic. And that's why I'm doing this video. Just to simply say, let's start the conversation. This is not an easy topic for me to talk about. It's such a imperfect and yet so necessary topic, right? Now, let's bring it down to just the average person who's faithful, in love with God, goes to church, but they have these thoughts and they have these, maybe a sadness inside of them regarding their sexual habits or lifestyle. This is where I think just returning to love is so important, and investing into your marriage or into that relationship. So I'm talking about dating and buying a new dress, or for the male to work out and to, I don't know, go for walks together with your wife and your partner, to actually invest into your marriage. Is a book that Rochelle and I read a while back. It was called His Needs, Her Needs, and it talked about putting deposits in each other's buckets. Deposits in each other's buckets. And I mean, just last week, 2 weeks ago, the 24th of August, it was our anniversary. And would it be easy for me to say, oh, I'm so busy, and for her to say, oh, I'm so swamped? Yes. But I took time out of my day. I drove all the way to her job. I went to an actual florist and I bought her 12 dozen roses. And I dropped him off at her work. I'd never been to her new job. And I went and waited for her a bit. She was busy, so I just left the card, and I knew she would love the cards. I mean, the roses. You know, it really comes down to those small investments. Now, Rochelle and I have done videos on this topic, and I can't wait to do more of them. What I love about her is she always talks about it's a commitment, it's a choice. For her, I love that about Rochelle. To her, it's not about feelings or about busyness or about being beautiful or not, or about, oh, he's the perfect man. For her, it's a choice. And now, thinking just personality types, she's an Enneagram 1. And so she's going to be more black and white about that. Now, others that are more romantics, or maybe, they're loosey-goosey, or maybe they're more analytical, they might handle that same truth differently. But I think it's a great advice. It's a choice. Are you going to choose to love that person? Now, talking a little bit about single people, or people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s that are without a husband or a wife or a partner, what does sexuality look like for that person? I think it's still about honoring yourself. I've never heard, in all the videos and all the books that I've read and all the studies that I've made, I've never heard a woman say, I'm so glad that I slept around. I'm so glad that I was with 50 men in the last 10 years. I feel so honored and so loved. No one says that. Regardless of faith, religion, it's just what we as humans need. We need safety. We need comfort. We need one partner. Now, males, as I said, we are, I would say, built for excess. You could call it conquering. Some females are the same way, so it's not just males. But this is where celibacy comes in. This is where holiness comes into play. For females, maybe you want that stability. You want that companionship. You want that safety. You want that exclusivity, that he's there only for me. But because you seem to bump into a bunch of crazy loser men who just want one thing, you compromise, and then you feel bad, and then you stop, and there's a habit. You stop for maybe 6 months or a year, or maybe even just a couple of weeks, and you're like, okay, no more dumb men, married men. I'm not going to do that ever again. But then that biology and those memories remain. Now, how do we solve all these things then? This is where coaching, I mean, for me, as you know, I'm a big believer in coaching, mentorship, therapy, guidance. I don't believe in just simply praying it away. I mean, now let me say, there are some people, probably a personality thing, maybe an Enneagram thing, that can just, quote, pray it away. It's like alcohol. Some people can just go cold turkey. In my church, there are about 400 people every Monday night at our weekly AA meetings. Those people can just pray it away. They're there because they need a process. My dream would be that instead of people praying their sexual needs away, or their sexual problems away, their sexual habits away, and I'm not saying that sexuality is bad, okay? So, as I said earlier, I believe that sexuality is beautiful, and it's natural, and it's something enjoyable and meant to be. But if you have gone through a challenge, or you are feeling there's something wrong with, with life and with sexuality, then I believe in a process of recovery, of healing, of mentorship. It could be a 12-step program. I don't mean necessarily sex addicts groups, although I think that would be great for more females and males to go to a sex addiction, whatever group. But if you're maybe not at that place, is to have mentorship, to say, how do I handle all these women that are beautiful back now that I'm at school or at college? Or I remember the first day I worked at USC, I thought, okay, this is a different level of humans. if you've ever been on campus at these universities, I went to Long Beach City here, so it's a different world out there. So how do you handle that? What, do you just ignore it? Do you just kind of, you go to Instagram and Twitter and, I mean, you're not going to get any advice, not any actual advice. Or if you're a single woman and you're now, as I said, 20, 30, 40, 20s, 30s, and 40s, and you want to have a more healthy marriage, you want to have a more intimate marriage, how do you do that? Well, you have mentorship. I want to, you know how like there's a whole thing of taking the stigma away from mental health and from all these things. I want to take the stigma away. Let me turn on the area here. I'm burning up. Ooh, it's so hot. It's like 90 degrees already. I want to take the stigma away out of sexuality, meaning to be able to have groups. I would love to, this is why I'm doing this, to host a group without any like weirdness, or you went through an affair. It's not divorce, although it could be a divorce recovery class. I'm not an expert in that, in divorce, obviously, or affairs, but I am an expert. Oops, almost dropped the phone there. In human behavior when it comes to sexuality. I shouldn't say an expert. It's something that I know about. But I would love to have a class at church called Sex and God. And I mean, this would have to be like, I don't know, a long class, I guess, like 52 weeks, right? To be able to help people through these, I guess, questions. Sorry about that. I'm trying to do too many things here at once. There we go. So I think that at the end of the day, it's, to me, this whole topic is about relationship. It's about honesty. It's about taking the stigma away from this topic. I am tired, sick and tired of hiding, meaning if I was in my 20s, or heck, even now in my late 40s and 50s, I'm tired of hiding, these things from myself. And my wife and I are very open about just about everything when it comes to this topic. But I'm tired, I guess, of having everyone else hide, and especially people of faith, that they're not allowed to talk about problems, or even, it's not just problems, just their desires for a night out with their husbands, or for them to wine and dine them or have sex with them again. These are important topics. It doesn't have to be like, oh, I had an affair, oh, I slept with that married man. It can just be maintenance or tune-ups or helping each other out in these areas. My dream is to be a mentor to young people, to couples, all ages. I guess all I know is up to my age and experience, 24 years. But that means something, right? I mean, we have succeeded at 24 years of intimate marriage with 3 teens. I mean, they're now young adults. And no divorces, no affairs, no, by the grace of God, and happy and working together as one. But it's not as if, okay, we're going to just hide from people or from our own ups and downs. My dream would be to talk about these things and have it be just, funny and no pictures, as people tell me, but TMI, right? But have it be something that we can talk about and begin the conversation. Towards what end? Towards happiness, towards sex, or if you're single, towards an understanding of your feelings and, oh, that's why I'm going through this. Or, oh man, I do want to sleep with that married man. Hey, Trig, can you help me with this? I mean, imagine if that's where we were at. If a young female in her mid-20s or mid-30s was tempted to sleep with that married man because, he loves you and all this stuff, and you could just call me or my wife or a mentor, your parents, goodness, that's tough, right? No one does that. And you could say, hey, can you walk me through this? And then someone who knows how to walk you through things can be there for you. How freeing would that be? Or if you're a woman in your late 40s or 50s and you're going through physical changes and all these things and stress, and your husband, you're afraid that he's going to run off with that 25-year-old or that 30-year-old, or maybe you have all these fears. Imagine if you could talk to someone one-on-one, or maybe as a couple, and have someone walk you through these concerns. And not just simply say, oh, you're bad, oh, let's have a Bible study and pray. No, but actually walk you through these steps. That's my dream. Conversation, honesty, assistance, help, relationship. It is my dream come true to talk about body image. You know, people maybe that, I mean, I have so many young people that tell me, Trig, I may be in my mid-20s and I've had a couple of kids and I hate my body because I'm 5 pounds overweight, and I go onto Instagram and I look at all these models and I don't look like them and I feel terrible. Wouldn't it be amazing to have a place, people that can walk you through these body image concerns? I mean, for our daughters, you know, as you know, we have 2 amazing, beautiful daughters. I thank God that they have us. And they've talked to me, obviously, you know, it's different with Rochelle and with me, what they talk about. But they talk to me about those things. And most of all, I am there to remind them of how beautiful they are. Same thing with our son. He's 16 now, so he's at that age, right? Those hormones, man, they are raging. And I've already talked to him, even though it's uncomfortable. But I say, hey, how's it going with that girl? What do you think? How are you feeling? Just to begin that conversation, to take the stigma away from all this stuff. So that's my hope and dream, is to have these honest conversations with kindness, without judgment, whether you are 20, 14, 35, 65, it doesn't matter. We all are sexual beings, unless you have the gift of non-sexuality. But for the rest of us, this is a gift. The gift of sex. It is a gift. I read this book years ago called The Gift of Sex, The Joy of Sex. Oh, it is such a gift. It is such a joy. But Satan and life and Instagram and our own sin, if you want to call it that, I mean, that's what the Bible calls it, has ruined the joy of sex. Let's bring it back. Let's have more joyful, God-honoring sex. How's that for a stream, right? This might be my most popular stream ever. And let's, more than anything, instead of like just putting some expectation on you or, hey, go and do this, imagine having a conversation. Are you interested in having a conversation? Are you interested in being honest with someone who won't judge you, and yet who is going to have a God-centered perspective? Not of judgment, not of do's and don'ts, but of process, of restoration, of joy, so that you can have the best of both worlds, of God and sex. That's my dream. Let me know how I can help, and we can begin that conversation. I am burning up in this car. I got to go. See you later.